The 1980s weren't just about colorful Saturday morning cartoons. They were a decade when animation pushed boundaries, shocked audiences, and rattled censorship boards worldwide. From surreal political allegories to ultra-violent cult hits, these animated films were banned, cut, or buried for years. Tonight, we're uncovering 15 explosive titles they never wanted you to see. 1. Heavy Metal, 1981. When heavy metal hit theaters in 1981, it was unlike anything audiences had ever seen. Adapted from the cult sci-fi and fantasy magazine of the same name, this animated anthology embraced a counterculture ethos, unapologetically drenched in nudity, surreal violence, and heavy rock music. It was marketed to adults, but in many countries, animated films were still synonymous with children's entertainment. That disconnect ignited immediate outrage. In Canada, Ireland, and parts of South America, the movie faced outright bans for what censors called pervasive sexual imagery and glorification of violence. Even in the United States, it faced distribution issues because its soundtrack featured major rock acts like Black Sabbath, Blue Oyster Cult, and Journey, creating rights complications that kept the film out of circulation for years. The animation, often rotoscoped from live models, pushed boundaries with explicit depictions of alien seduction, drug-fueled hallucinations, and apocalyptic warfare. Critics dismissed it as adolescent fantasy, but its audience, a mix of sci-fi fans, metalheads, and midnight moviegoers, saw it as groundbreaking. Over time, heavy metal became a cult legend. The very content that censors tried to suppress helped it gain mythic status among underground animation enthusiasts. For many, it marked the moment when animation proved it could be unapologetically adult. 2. Wicked City, 1987. When Japan's Wicked City arrived on Western shores, it brought something most audiences weren't ready for: a fusion of horror, science fiction, and explicit adult animation. Directed by Yoshiaki Kawajiri, this anime plunged viewers into a grim, alternate world where humans and demons coexist under a fragile peace treaty. Its graphic violence, grotesque transformations, and sexualized horror scenes made it a lightning rod for controversy. The United Kingdom heavily censored the film, removing minutes of footage that included disturbing sexual violence and gore. Australia and several European countries temporarily banned it, deeming it unsuitable for any public exhibition. Even the US release came with cuts, though a fully uncut version would later find a home on VHS, becoming an underground hit. Wicked City pushed animation into territory usually reserved for grindhouse cinema. Its stylized brutality and noir-inspired visuals earned it praise from genre fans, but also placed it in the crosshairs of politicians pushing anti-obscenity campaigns in the late 80s. Over time, it has been reevaluated not just as exploitation, but as a stylish, provocative work that showed how far anime could go in exploring the dark corners of human and inhuman desire. 3. Akira, 1988. Katsuhiro Otomo's Akira wasn't just a movie, it was a cultural explosion. Based on his own manga, the film depicted a cyberpunk Tokyo scarred by corruption, biker gangs, and psychic warfare. But its hyper-detailed, hand-drawn animation was matched by graphic violence that startled even seasoned sci-fi fans. In several European countries, including Norway and Germany, Akira was initially censored for scenes of gore, dismemberment, and body horror. Australia released it with restrictions, and in the US, it was rated R but still drew criticism from parents unfamiliar with Japanese anime's adult edge. The film's climactic sequence, a grotesque transformation involving mutating flesh and collapsing architecture, became infamous, with some broadcasters cutting it entirely during TV airings. Yet these same sequences helped cement Akira as a landmark in animation history. The bans and edits didn't dampen its influence. Instead, Akira helped ignite the global anime boom, proving that animated films could rival live-action blockbusters in both scope and emotional power. Today, it's remembered as a turning point, one that forced censors to confront the fact that animation could be as raw, graphic, and politically charged as any live-action film. 4. When the Wind Blows, 1986. At first glance, When the Wind Blows looks like a gentle animated film. Its watercolor backgrounds, soft character designs, and elderly protagonists give it the appearance of a harmless family story. But beneath the warm visuals lies one of the bleakest nuclear war films ever made. Based on Raymond Briggs's graphic novel, the film follows Jim and Hilda Bloggs, an elderly couple in rural England who try to survive after a nuclear strike. Their naive faith in government pamphlets and civil defense instructions slowly unravels as radiation sickness sets in. There are no monsters, no explosions after the opening, just the slow, inevitable deterioration of two innocent people. The movie's emotional gut punch was too much for some. In several countries, including parts of Eastern Europe and even certain British television channels, the film was banned or restricted from public broadcast. Officials feared it would fuel anti-nuclear sentiment and provoke public unrest during the tense final years of the Cold War. Its soundtrack, featuring David Bowie and Roger Waters of Pink Floyd, only deepened the film's melancholy atmosphere. Viewers who managed to see it often left shaken, some saying they couldn't watch another war film for years. While it never courted controversy with gore or nudity, When the Wind Blows was considered dangerous for another reason, it stripped away all illusions about surviving a nuclear war, delivering a message more devastating than any explosion. 5. Fist of the North Star, 1986. In the mid-80s, anime was starting to gain a global foothold, but Fist of the North Star made it clear that Japanese animation could be as violent as the goriest exploitation films. Adapted from the popular manga, the film tells the post-apocalyptic tale of Kenshiro, a martial artist who uses lethal pressure point techniques to make his enemies literally explode. And that's no exaggeration. Heads burst, torsos rip open, and limbs fly with alarming regularity. While the manga was already infamous for its blood-soaked pages, the movie amplified the carnage through fluid animation and dramatic slow-motion sequences. Censorship boards in several countries balked. In the UK, the BBFC demanded heavy cuts before granting a video release. Australia's version was slashed to pieces, with some scenes removed entirely. Even in Japan, the filmmakers toned down certain moments from the manga to avoid an outright ban. Fans, however, sought out bootleg and uncut versions, fueling the film's underground legend. For many anime enthusiasts in the West, Fist of the North Star became a rite of passage, proof that animation could deliver the same visceral impact as an R-rated action flick. Today it remains both a cult classic and a textbook example of why late 80s anime sparked global censorship debates. 6. Barefoot Jen, 1983. Barefoot Jen isn't just another war film. It's one of the most harrowing animated depictions of real-life tragedy ever created. Based on Keiji Nakazawa's autobiographical manga, it recounts his childhood in Hiroshima during the atomic bombing. Unlike many war stories, it spares no detail in showing the horror. People burned alive, bodies disintegrating into ash, and the slow agony of radiation poisoning. When first released in Japan, the film was hailed as a powerful anti-war statement. But when attempts were made to screen it internationally, particularly in the US and parts of Europe, backlash erupted. Some officials claimed it was too graphic for animation. Others accused it of anti-American bias. In the 2010s, decades after its release, Barefoot Jen even faced renewed censorship in Japanese schools, where some education boards removed it from reading lists for being too disturbing for children. Critics argued this was a political move to soften Japan's wartime history. Yet its emotional force is exactly what has kept it alive in cultural memory. Survivors have praised the film for showing the reality they lived through, unfiltered and unromanticized. Watching Barefoot Jen is not easy, but that's precisely the point. It forces audiences to confront the true human cost of war, in a way few animated films ever have. 7th Golgo, 13, The Professional, 1983. When Golgo 13, The Professional premiered, it instantly stood out, not just for its sharp, noir-inspired style, but for the fact that it was one of the first animated films to incorporate CGI for complex action sequences. Based on the long-running manga about an elite hitman known only as Golgo 13, The movie was a cocktail of espionage, political intrigue, and unflinching violence. Its plot follows Golgo as he's hunted across the globe after assassinating an oil tycoon's son. The story weaves through sniper duels, helicopter battles, and seductions, with each sequence designed to push the boundaries of animated realism. But it wasn't just the stylized gunfights that drew controversy. Several scenes contained sexual content that many countries' ratings boards considered far too explicit for animation. In Australia, the film was banned for years. In the UK, it underwent cuts to scenes involving nudity and a particularly brutal assassination sequence. Even in the US, where it saw a VHS release, it came with an R rating and edited content. Ironically, these restrictions only heightened its underground appeal among anime collectors. Today, Golgo 13. The Professional is remembered both for pioneering animation technology and for testing how far animated action could go before running headfirst into censorship walls. 8. 1001 Nights, 1982. Legendary manga artist Osamu Tezuka, often called the god of manga, had a reputation for pushing the boundaries of storytelling. With 1001 Nights, he took Middle Eastern folklore and gave it a surreal adult twist that baffled censors and enchanted art house audiences. This was no Disney fairy tale. Tezuka's version mixed eroticism, psychedelic imagery, and political satire, presenting a dreamlike world where sensuality and violence were intertwined. Animated orgies, surreal depictions of desire, and biting commentary on imperialism made the film a lightning rod for controversy. Several Middle Eastern countries banned it outright for religious and moral violations. In conservative markets, even heavily edited versions were deemed unsuitable for general audiences. The explicit sequences, though often presented in a surreal and symbolic way, were considered too provocative for the era. Despite its limited release, the film gained a cult following in Japan and Europe, particularly among animation students and counterculture cinephiles. It remains a testament to Tezuka's willingness to challenge societal taboos through a medium many still dismissed as only for children. 9. Twilight of the Cockroaches, 1987. One of the strangest entries on this list, Twilight of the Cockroaches blends traditional animation with live-action footage in a dark allegory about war, xenophobia, and human cruelty. The story follows a society of cockroaches living in peace in a messy bachelor's apartment, until humans decide to wage an all-out extermination campaign. What sounds like a quirky premise quickly turns grim. The roaches' society is destroyed in graphic detail, with poison, drowning, and dismemberment shown in unsettling animated realism. The allegory for genocide and forced displacement was clear, perhaps too clear for some. The film was pulled from television in certain Asian markets for its political undertones, and for imagery deemed too disturbing for general audiences. Some broadcasters refused to air it entirely, arguing that its realistic extermination scenes blurred the line between animation and horror. In Japan, it became a cult curiosity, often discussed in film schools for its daring blend of live action and animation. Outside Japan, it was more elusive, seen mostly in underground screenings where viewers debated whether it was a fable, a political statement, or a nightmare disguised as a cartoon. 10th, Angel's Egg, 1985. Few animated films are as enigmatic or as polarizing as Mamoru Oshii's Angel's Egg, a slow, haunting meditation on faith, loss, and apocalypse. It tells the story of a mysterious girl carrying a large egg through a desolate, ruined world. She meets a silent, armored man who may or may not be her companion, protector, or destroyer. Almost no dialogue is spoken, and the narrative unfolds through surreal, symbolic imagery. While visually stunning, the film baffled audiences upon release. Its religious undertones, including motifs referencing Christian iconography, the flood, and themes of divine abandonment, stirred unease in Japan's conservative circles. Censorship wasn't tied to violence or nudity this time, but to the fear that its content challenged and deconstructed religious beliefs. In some international markets, particularly in parts of Eastern Europe and South America, the film was banned or pulled from distribution for religious blasphemy and being unsuitable for public audiences. Even in Japan, it received only a limited theatrical run before vanishing into obscurity for decades. Oshii himself has admitted the film reflects his personal crisis of faith during production, which only deepened its mystique. For years, Angel's Egg was passed around on bootleg VHS tapes among animation students and art house film fans. Today, it's hailed as a masterpiece of surrealist animation, but its history remains tied to the fact that its quiet, dreamlike beauty was once considered too unsettling for mainstream release. 11th Robot Carnival, 1987. Robot Carnival is a fascinating anthology of 9 short animated films, each by a different director, exploring the theme of robots. From slapstick comedy to post-apocalyptic tragedy, the tone shifts wildly. And that's part of what made it so controversial in certain countries. One segment, Presence, depicts a lonely man creating a robotic companion who develops human emotions, leading to his regret and abandonment of her. Another, Cloud, is a poetic journey through time and death. But the most notorious, Franken's Gears, features violent destruction and grotesque imagery that shocked censors. In some regions, the darker shorts were cut or heavily edited before release. South Korea banned it outright for its bleak depictions of humanity's self-destruction. The Soviet Union also blocked screenings, citing decadent Western nihilism in its themes. Even in the US, the anthology was marketed cautiously, with certain scenes trimmed for early television broadcasts. The censorship was as inconsistent as the shorts themselves. Some markets objected to violence, others to implied sexuality, and still others to its philosophical fatalism. Over time, however, Robot Carnival found an audience on home video and became a prized find for animation collectors. For many fans, the uncut version wasn't just better. It was essential to understand the film's thematic complexity and emotional range. 12. Lensman, 1984. Based loosely on E. Doc Smith's classic space opera novels, Lensman was a bold attempt to merge pulpy sci-fi adventure with anime spectacle. It followed Kimball Kinnison, a young man drawn into an intergalactic war after inheriting the powerful lens from a dying alien. The film combined space battles, alien worlds, and psychic warfare, making it a visual feast for science fiction fans. But trouble came quickly. First, the Lensman adaptation was unauthorized. The estate of E. Smith had not approved it, leading to legal disputes. This meant that in some countries, particularly the United States and parts of Europe, the film could not be officially distributed. Copies that did circulate were often in altered or bootleg form. In addition to the copyright battle, censors in the US and UK cut scenes involving stylized violence and suggestive imagery. While far from the most explicit anime of the 80s, it still contained moments, such as psychic interrogation sequences, that were considered too intense for younger audiences. Because of these combined legal and censorship issues, Lensman became hard to find, gaining a sort of forbidden allure. Anime fans sought out imports and taped TV airings, often trading them through fan clubs. Today it stands as a cult relic of 80s anime, both for its dazzling visual ambition and the strange, tangled history that kept it locked away from wider audiences. 13. Urus Yatsura. 2. Beautiful Dreamer, 1984. When Urus Yatsura, 2. Beautiful Dreamer, premiered, fans of the original manga and anime series expected lighthearted chaos, slapstick comedy, and alien romance. Instead, director Mamoru Oshii delivered a surreal, philosophical meditation on dreams, reality, and the passage of time. The film takes place the day before a school festival, but something is wrong. Time begins looping, trapping the characters in a perpetual yesterday. As they try to break free, reality unravels in ways that blur the line between fantasy and existence itself. While deeply artistic, the shift in tone from comedic hijinks to dreamlike existentialism shocked audiences and angered producers. In Japan, the film had a modest theatrical run, but some international distributors deemed it too strange for release. In certain Asian markets, censors went further, claiming its surreal imagery and depictions of alternate realities risked psychological confusion for younger viewers. The Soviet Union outright banned it, citing its subversive and non-linear messaging. What pushed censors over the edge wasn't violence or explicit material. It was the idea that the film might influence audiences to question the nature of reality, conformity, and the structures of everyday life. Despite this, the movie gained cult status in art house and anime circles. Today it's recognized as one of Oshii's early masterpieces, a work that dared to treat animated comedy as a gateway to profound philosophical inquiry, and in doing so, earned itself a place on more than one censorship list. 14. Grave of the Fireflies, 1988. Studio Ghibli is known worldwide for whimsical fantasy, but Grave of the Fireflies is something entirely different. A devastating war drama based on the semi-autobiographical story by Akiyuki Nosaka. It follows two siblings, Seita and Setsuko, struggling to survive in the aftermath of the firebombing of Kobe during World War II. There are no magical rescues, no happy endings, just hunger, illness, and loss. Upon release, the film was acclaimed in Japan for its emotional power, but internationally, some distributors refused to screen it. In certain regions of China and South Korea, it faced delays or bans due to its portrayal of Japanese civilian suffering, a politically sensitive subject. In parts of Europe and North America, television networks avoided airing it, claiming it was too emotionally disturbing for audiences expecting animation to be family-friendly. One infamous TV station in the United States scheduled it during a children's movie slot, only to receive a flood of complaints from parents shocked by its unflinching portrayal of starvation and death. Censors didn't cut scenes, they simply avoided showing it altogether. The reasoning was clear. This wasn't entertainment, it was a cinematic wound, an experience designed to hurt, and that's why it endures. Grave of the Fireflies may not have been banned for explicit imagery, but its raw emotional devastation made it one of the most avoided, and later, most celebrated, animated films of the 1980s. 15. Violence. Jack, Harlem Bomber, 1986. Few anime titles live up to their name quite like Violence Jack. Based on Go Nagai's infamous manga, the Harlem Bomber OVA is a brutal, post-apocalyptic nightmare filled with bloodshed, chaos, and scenes that pushed animated violence to its absolute limits. Set in a ruined Tokyo after a massive earthquake, the story follows the colossal anti-hero, Violence Jack, as he navigates a lawless wasteland ruled by gangs. The Harlem Bomber episode, in particular, features extreme gore, sadistic brutality, and sexualized violence that shocked even seasoned anime fans. In Japan, the OVA was released directly to video, bypassing theaters entirely. A move that gave creators more freedom, but also ensured it landed in the crosshairs of censors abroad. In the UK, it became a key target during the late 80s video nasty panic, where ultra-violent films were seized by authorities. Australia banned it outright, and several European countries refused to classify it, making legal distribution impossible. The notoriety only increased demand in underground anime circles. Bootleg copies were traded at conventions, often with warnings about its disturbing content. Even today, uncut versions are hard to find in some markets, and debates rage over whether it's a cult classic of unrestrained creativity or simply gratuitous exploitation. What's certain is that Violence Jack, Harlem Bomber helped cement the 80s as a decade where animation proved it could be more shocking and more dangerous to censors than live-action cinema. These 15 animated films proved the 80s wasn't afraid to cross the line, even if it meant being silenced. Which band classic shocked you most? Share your thoughts below, hit like, and subscribe for more untold stories of cinema history. The next reel might be even more dangerous.